How many times a day do you laugh?
I don't. Well, let's see. If I take just the messages between you and probably three or four other coaching or friends for a long time, probably looking at a good 50 there. And the crazy stuff that young kids say, you're talking another, 100. I've been through so much in the social media space with coaching that at this point, nothing surprises me. And so I just try to laugh it all off. Cheeks hurt at the end of the day, which is always a good sign.
Welcome back to Podcast on Wheels. I'm your host, Brian Smith, and today, for the second time, we have Mr. Josh Cathcart. Josh, welcome to the show, brother.
How are y'all? Thanks for having me back.
Man, I'm excited to have you on the show again and the relationship that we've been able to build. But man, I get a lot of energy from your channels, your social media stuff. How do you always have that energy, man? How do you do that?
Man, it's I think part of it is I'm born with it. I've kind of always been very high motor, high energy with everything. But for what I do and everything, baseball is what I love. And softball has grown just with the business, but baseball and softball, just that sport is incredible. I get really excited about it. I'm a geek, young fan at heart. Um, when Carlos Correa came back to the Astros, I don't know that that means that the Astros are going to make the World Series. I don't know what that holds, but the energy that that brought to me and to the city of Houston and everything, it's just infectious. And I try my best. I don't always do it. Not all of us can be our best every single day. But when I get in a cage, when I am, doing post, I want people to know that there's, true love and, the energy behind what I'm doing. I think we had talked about this before on the first show. I didn't even know what social media was until 2018. And so I had been this, rambunctious energy, ball of energy coach for, 14 years up until then. And so, and I think that, and that's the feedback I get from people, like people that watch and people that have been following know that it's genuine. It's not trying to fake it in front of the camera or anything else. So, yeah, man.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've like I said, I've watched the energy. I love the energy and watching you train the kids and seeing the things. But tell us a little bit about your business. If somebody wanted to watch, you have the YouTube channel, you have Instagram, you have so many different things. I was on your website earlier today. Camps, you travel, you're doing different things. But what are some things that you would say if somebody wanted to learn more about hitting from you or work with you? Like, how would somebody go about that, Josh?
So I have online options. If you go to my website, you can purchase your swing analysis, and then based off that swing analysis, I create custom practice plans. I tell people, once they've gone through that kind of process, that I think of myself as your hitting coach. I give people my personal phone numbers. I have people texting me videos all the time. Um, and so that's a big part of it. I still do a lot of in-person lessons. I did 136 hours in July of in-person lessons. Um, and then I'm doing between probably 20 and 25 analysis a month with practice plans. um, and then the follow-ups after that process has been done. You've got your analysis, you've got your practice plan, you've gone through that. Then I do Zoom sessions, kind of by request, to follow up and clean up and do all that. As far as the camps go, you can request me to come to any city off of my website. There's a link to fill out a form. um, I've done them on the East Coast. I've done them in Florida. I've done them in Arizona. I've done them in California. So, I try to be as accessible as possible. I do my best. I tell people all the time, I don't have a team. I don't have a social media team. I don't have an editor. My brother, he does, like, I'll send him the YouTube video and he posts it, but there's nothing fancy here. This is just hitting. And I'm trying to get out the best information that I possibly can in the simplest form for people to digest. I don't try to dive into all the fancy, biomechanical terminology and everything else. What I do is geared from 9 years old to 18-year olds. I want to get you, if you're a young kid, I want you to enjoy the game, get into high school, hopefully have that experience. If you're a high school kid that wants to get into college, I want to use my knowledge, my experience to help you do that. But after they get into college, they move on to the next person in on their journey. Um, I do have people that come back, obviously, kids that I've worked with for, you know, 8, 10 years that are now in college. When they're home, we work. But, I'm not doing a bunch of work with, minor league guys or big time, D1 guys aren't like searching me out, but that's not what it's designed for. It's designed for the youth. It's designed for parents that are trying to help their kids. It's designed for young coaches trying to find their way. So a lot of different avenues. I answer messages all day, every day. It seems like people just, hey, can you look at this quick clip? And then because of my YouTube channel, I can say, yeah, man, go check this out. Um, and it's been a blessing. We've talked about it before. I'm getting to do what I love, and in my opinion, I have a really good setup um, without a bunch of external people, in it. It's just me. It's how I want to do it. My brother's been great, but it's just a dude who loves hitting.
Yeah, and it's like you said, it's obvious your energy. It's obvious what you bring. And for the people like you said that know you, it's not you're one way on camera, you're one way in the cage, and you're a different way when you're out of there. You are who you are, and you're getting to do what you love. And that's something that I hope that the kids that work with you find that passion through that. If it's hitting, great. If it's baseball, great, right? But there's a lot more that you bring there from a mindset, mentality, success, So tell us a little bit about when you go into work with a young athlete, the 9 to 18, what are some of the mindset things? What are some of the mental obstacles that you've seen that you've been able to help people with?
Most of the time, well, we'll start at the young and kind of work up. So with the young ones, it's almost without fault, unless they are just, one of those hyper competitive kids, just, they come out of the womb and they're a good competitor. Um, Most of it is fear of failure and getting them to understand that in this game from the offensive side, it is designed for you to fail, and we have to understand that. Now, are we always striving to be the best we possibly can? Or do we want to find different ways to create positivity? Absolutely. I tell kids all the time, sometimes you gotta fake yourself out. You know, you go 0 for 4, but that 0 for 4 is really, two sack flies, a walk, and a line out. That's a good day. Like, and so you have to kind of, the way that you look at it has to switch, especially for the young kids. Um, I have something that I call contact satisfaction, which I think a lot of young kids these days have fallen into. They basically are going to the plate in a defensive two strike mindset where it's, I'm just trying to make contact, and getting them over that hump to do, when you go to the plate, before you get two strikes, we're up here to do damage. And if that means you take your A swing and you foul one back or you swing and miss, so what? That doesn't mean we go to slap it around on the next swing. Um, and so that's it for the young ones. Once you start getting up there, to the 14s into high school, then we start talking about your actual approach, watching pitchers' tendencies, understanding the situation when you walk up to the plate. What do I need to do for my team right now? Or can I be a little selfish with this at bat? Is this the moment where I do come up and I take an absolute rip? Or is it, hey, I just need to hit a ground ball backside to get that guy over? And being able to understand that in real time is something that a lot of young players in high school, even at the varsity level, they can't or haven't been taught or don't do. They get caught up in the moment. They're hyperventilating. The crowd, is getting to them, and they lose focus of the task at hand. Um, I was watching Barry Bonds, man. Like, say what you will about him and his personality, that's irrelevant to me. When that guy starts talking about hitting, everyone should listen. And one of the things that he said in a podcast is, it's me and the pitcher. And as long as I can keep that focus, then I have a chance. He was like, if I start worrying about, and he used the word goons. He said, if I start worrying about all those goons out there, now I'm getting out of my focus. And for young hitters, understanding that, yes, this is a team game. I want you to do what is best for the team. You do well, the team does well, etc. But the actual at bat is a individual one-on-one competition, and you have to treat it as such. It's a boxing match. It's a one-on-one basketball game. It's a, penalty kick in soccer. Like, it is you versus the pitcher. So that's the biggest thing for those high school guys is understanding the moment, understanding the situation, compete against the pitcher. Don't make it a bigger deal than it is. Um, and then the victories. If you hit an absolute rocket at the center fielder and he catches it, you win as a hitter. That's a victory. Just because you didn't get on base doesn't mean you didn't win that battle. The pitcher got lucky that you hit it to one of the 8 dudes behind him. So that's kind of where that is. And then if you get into the college stuff, man, it's that's a whole different animal because now you're talking about more responsibility, having to handle the classroom and the travel. For the guys, am I trying to get recruited to go from JUCO to D1? And, if I'm a D1, am I looking for the draft? You know, Even the girls now, with all the professional softball stuff going on, which is awesome, by the way. Um, you know, there's different levels of I guess anxiety and unknown that we have to talk about and find ways to overcome.
Yeah, I mean, you just hit the nail on the head and everything, and that was a great job of summarizing that entire thing. Thank you for that. I want to tell you a quick story that was just brought to my attention from memory. Is a friend of mine who helped me build this studio. We went to an event in Nashville, and it was kind of a private concert for a up and coming country artist. D Black. He toured with Nelly, believe it or not, as Nelly's country tour happened a couple years ago. But he had played college baseball, and he's got a pretty cool song I'll send you. But a knee injury altered his collegiate career. He's playing D1 baseball, middle infielder, guy that could run, and he ended up opening a moving company, built up enough in the moving company where he could pursue his lifelong dream of being a country artist. And now he's playing and touring and doing all the stuff, right? So the guy that helped me build the studio was at that event listening to D Black play. We talked after the show, and the guy that built the studio, he asked me, he said, how do you baseball players always find a way? Like every entrepreneur, every business person, everybody that was a baseball player. I said, because when you can go 3 for 10 and still count that as a win and understanding what you're teaching, right? It's like, I don't care how many times I line out, swing and miss, whatever happens, I'm going to stay true to that one-on-one. It's me versus that day. It's me versus that obstacle. And taking what you're teaching, man, it's like, shed some light on that. What are some things as a coach, as social media is working with all these kids that sometimes you have to step back and take that same approach to say, okay, this is this situation, that situation. You kind of said earlier, as you've been through things, you've seen things, but from a mentality standpoint, you've seen a lot. And how do you deal with those things in your situation? Because there's a lot of coaches that watch this show. So let's help them for a minute.
Yeah, I know it sounds cliche, but you have to take every individual as an individual. You can't apply something that worked. Now, you can, in some instances, something that worked for one kid's going to work for another. But as a general rule, it doesn't work that way. You've got kids that you've got to kind of pat on the back a little bit. You've got kids that you've got to really get on to. You've got kids that, I've got, man, one of my girls, she's actually going to college this year. She'll be a freshman this year, D1. And dude, it's just matter of fact. Like, it's not me having to get on her, but she wants me to tell her straight up, no sugarcoating, nothing. Where if I talk that way to another one of my, older girls, they'd be like, whoa. Um, and so I think understanding the mentality of what makes people tick, and then I think that you have to give kids the freedom to experiment. I think that that's lost a lot, especially with hitting. Coaches that teach, and this is one of my big pet peeves. And I know there's some thoughts out there, some methods out there that people think, oh, this is the only way to do things. If you are coaching every kid the same mechanics and same swing, I think that's a problem. You're going to help some, absolutely, but I think you're going to be missing out on a lot also. And so learning as many different techniques, methods, philosophies, however you want to frame that, and really learning it, studying it, not like I heard this on one video, but diving into it and really understanding, how do I apply this? Okay. This kid needs balance in the ground, work from the core. This kid needs rear legged, feel like I'm swinging up because they're normally crashing forward. This kid needs his hands Barry Bonds low because he naturally raises. This kid needs his hands Mike Trout high because he drops. Um, and so that's the thing, man. As a coach, you got to be a chameleon. You got to be able to see what's in front of you pretty quickly. It's not going to be day one, but pretty quickly process and understand, what does this kid need from me? And not only from a movement and technical standpoint, but from a mental, how am I going to approach this? And I think we talked about this maybe in the first podcast. I think at some point we've touched on it. I think that one of the reasons that I am good at that is from my teaching background. I was an elementary PE teacher and a high school baseball coach. So every day for 9 years, I was working with 5-year olds through 18-year olds. And from every demographic, every type of household, every, athletic background, I mean, the whole spectrum,
Mhm.
and having to learn how to relate to those kids and teach them both life and sports. When you have to teach a kindergartner how to jump rope and throw a football, then you can like figure out, all right, how do I going to handle this fourth grader? And then you go to the high school and you've got a bunch of dudes who are going through puberty, who their girlfriend broke up with them, their buddy they got in a fight with, whatever. And now we got to switch gears and go to this. It gave me the tools to handle all the different kids that I have now across the world at this point.
Yeah, and that the word that you used in explaining that I jumped at was the chameleon, and understanding who do I need to be for this situation. And years ago when I did hitting and work with athletes, I had to learn. I told somebody the other day, my first ever practice at a college. team. I think I was 25, something like that. I showed up to day one and I had a whole list of what we were going to do. And this is what the catchers were going to do. This is how we were going to do this. And I was a catching hitting guy at that time. I forgot to see what they knew first. I forgot to come in and learn, right? It's like, so as I evolved, I would say, hey, if the levels are 1 through 5, 5 being the best you can be, well, when you come to me, are you at a 1, 2, 3, 4? What is my job to get you to the next step? And I see that's why we've built a great relationship. Not to mention all the humor and the fun that I see and the things that we talk about. But it's like, let's hit on that real quick, and then I'll let somebody else jump on here and take my chair over. But how many times a day do you laugh, Josh? Seriously, how many times a day
Oh,
do you
shoot,
laugh?
I don't. Well, let's see. If I take just the messages between you and probably 3 or 4 other buddies and girlfriends of mine, just coaching or friends for a long time, and the different memes or the different posts, I mean, you're probably looking at a good 50 there. Then you talk about when I'm in a cage with kids and the crazy stuff that young kids say, you're talking another, 100. Um, and then, man, I really like, I try to watch a lot of comedy. Like we were talking about it before we came on. I've just been through so much, and I know everybody's been through stuff in life,
Mhm.
but just in this space, like I've been through so much in the social media space with coaching that at this point nothing surprises me, and so I just try to laugh it all off.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot, man. My cheeks hurt at the end of the day, which is always a good sign.
It is, man, and that's the reason that I enjoy. I get excited when I see a message from you because I know within the first 5 seconds I'm about to smile, and Courtney goes, "Yes, he's going to be happy because Cathcart just sent him a message. Life's going to be good here in the next few minutes." So from me and my family, thank you for all the messages. It's beautiful. But, you know, we've talked a little bit about how you do it and as far as what you do and kind of nerding out. I'm going to jump out of the seat right here. I'm going to let Courtney jump in and you guys have fun talking about the real way to teach hitting and produce some force. So I'm going to jump up and let her
All right.
come in, Josh. Thank you, sir.
All right, man. Always, man. Much love.
All right. I'm just switching chairs.
Oh, now I got the brains.
Yeah, I got the pressure. He's I haven't talked hitting in a while. I love some biomechanics and I love some ground force production and I love rotation and moving fast. I still move fast in the gym. Like somebody's
Y'all
watching me
do.
somewhere.
Y'all do move fast in the gym. I'll give y'all that. Y'all been looking good, man.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just you know, when you work for yourselves, you got to set your schedule and gym's a priority. Fun.
No doubt.
Yeah.
I try to get mine in between lessons or before and after.
Because you get a lot of workout in lessons, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I like we were talking a little bit earlier about like the water stuff.
Yeah,
Getting there, and just for me getting older, I finally actually started having some joint just overuse stuff from coaching, and using the bands and using the water bags and doing that stuff just for my own core stability, balance, coordination, and stuff. I try to get a good amount of that in throughout the day, whether it be through example or if I do have some downtime. So it is a priority. We only got one body.
that's right. That's right. So what do you when you get sore, what is it? Is it mostly your hips, the lower body sore from swinging, or is it shoulders?
No, I've so probably 2 years ago. It was actually New Year's 2023. I woke up and had the first real like intense back pain. Like I thought it was a herniated disc at first. I mean, I almost fell down when I stood up. And it went to a chiropractor. They kind of readjusted. Nothing really worked, but they could feel that I was knotted up. And so I ended up going to a sports massage guy.
Mhm.
and it ended up being a hamstring and a core issue. I wasn't strong enough in my hamstrings and core. And so basically, the right side of my lower back was trying to accommodate for that. And dude, it had me out of like I could move, but it basically had me out of commission for about 2 months. And so I call it now. I say my old man stretches. I've got my 20 to 25 minutes down on the floor, hips, back, core work every day. And if I miss, I can go 1 or 2, but if I get into that 3 or 4 day without doing it, when I start throwing again or when I start swinging again, I can feel it all coming back. So it's maintenance at this point.
Heard that. Yeah, I know, just it's been a while since I've taught hitting, well, just athletes in general, but there's always 2 things you have to do. Talk about approach is gravity has to be addressed. So are you working with it or against it? And because it's
Hmm.
always there 24/7, whether you're sport, sleeping, in competition, training, you have to resist gravity. And then resistance. So your body's always going to move in the path of least resistance. So if you're weak, like you said, the hamstring and the core is weak, well, then your lower back's going to try to, if it's the stronger muscle, it's going to try to do the work. And that typically doesn't, you know, mesh well. We're going to have pain. We're going to have limitations. We're not going to be able to actually do the motions we want to do because our body's just like, hey, that muscle that needs to be used to do that movement isn't the strongest muscle. So I'm going to use the strongest muscle because that's what I'm going to do. So, getting that complete balance and then maintenance and stay in there. So, yeah,
For
it's,
for sure. And
yeah.
and for me, I guess it was that was the first time because I've always been active. I would never consider myself, other than maybe the last couple years in college, I would never consider myself a gym rat. I always have just been very active. I've always, played sports as an adult. I was still, playing beach volleyball in my early 20s. I was still, playing co-ed softball. I was doing like me and Brian were talking about with the high school kids. When I was coaching high school baseball, I was 25 to 32. So I'd get in the weight room and I'd get down and I'd, work out with them a little bit. Um, but this was the first time that it was like, oh, I got to really like get myself on a program um, to keep myself healthy for my athletes. Like, obviously, I wanted to do it for me. My quality of life's important, but for me to be able to do things the way that people, my clients, expect me to do them, being able to get in the cage and demonstrate, I think that that's huge for coaches, especially with young men. Like, if I'm a young guy, if I'm a 14-year-old and I go into a hitting or a pitching or a catching and my coach is out of shape and can't get down there and do it, why in the world would I listen to you? Like, you know?
Amen.
And so having to stay in shape just for that reason alone, this was the first time that I was like, oh, dang, I can't get up and show this kid how to swing right now. Um, and so that was I'm going to use the word embarrassing. I mean, I know that it wasn't really my fault. Like, it wasn't
Mhm.
embarrassed, but it was like, "Hey, man, I'm really sorry. I can't do this right now."
Get it. Yeah. I used to catch all of my pitching lessons and throw the ball back to him. So I would have some
That
days where
catch
I'm like, my arm does not want to go up. I'm like doing this to him. Hoping it's
well,
my
that's
35-foot
that is
lessons, not
one
my
thing
43-foot lesson so I can get the ball back. But yeah, I had to shut that down
that's
and
one thing that that's one thing that I think a lot of hitting, like, softball, baseball coaches that are throwing miss
mhm.
out on. I have an arm care routine.
Well, yeah.
Like, I the facility that I work in at Hardball, I've been there 13 years now. We have never had a pitching machine. I have been throwing batting practice to all of my hitters, baseball and softball, for 13 years, not to mention the years of high school that I was doing it with freshmen.
Yeah.
And I basically had shoulder reconstruction when I was 21 years old.
Dang.
Um, and so keeping it in shape and whatnot is that's part of my daily. Like I have to do those things, but that's been going on forever. But for coaches out there, young coaches that may be starting out and think you're He-Man, you're not. You better start taking care of your arms and your bodies right now.
Especially if you're coaching, you know, as a business, you should be a billboard. You should have it. But I was fortunate that I worked in a facility with a former big leaguer who went through a shoulder surgery in the big league. So I watched him do his shoulder rehab every day because I mirrored him. He caught his lessons. We didn't use pitching machines either. I had a little bit easier time underhand. But yeah, I learned from that, and then I just grew it because I mean, just selfishly, if my athletes can't pitch, they can't pay for lessons, so I'm out of business, right? It doesn't sound good, but still,
Yeah,
like, it's motivation to keep them all healthy, and if I can't do my job, I can't show up for them either, so, taking it serious, being an athlete with them and having that arm care, I was fortunate to learn
abs-
firsthand from, you know, the highest level of what it should actually look like.
absolutely. And I
Yeah,
think that, and me and you had kind of touched on this in the first podcast also, just teaching players how to be more athletic, how to move properly. Body sequencing, like we had started to talk about like using the ground properly. I know that's a big like thing in the hitting world, not just the hitting world, in athletics in general, but in
right.
my space, getting into the ground so the ground can react and doing all these things. How are we going to have the kinetic chain work properly to be the most efficient and the most powerful and the most explosive? Um, and people, I think, especially young people, they take that for granted. They're like, "Oh, I'm moving fine." And then you actually show them or teach them, well, what you were doing might have been working, but it wasn't nearly as good as you can be. And the light bulbs start to go off. And that's something that's not even a hitting thing. It just translates to everything. You move better, you run better, you throw better, you swing better, like you slide better. Everything is better. Um, One of the people that I really have followed and enjoyed is Dr. Ishmael Gallo, the baseball flows guy. Um, if y'all haven't seen his stuff, it is incredible. It's baseball flows.
Baseball
Um, and
flows.
it's all about movement. He was a big league ball player, and now he's Dr. Israel Gallo. He's a movement specialist. And, his videos and training are at home, on the ground, getting yourself up without using your hands or anything else, hip mobility, core strength. It's very, very good stuff, but it translates into everything. And part of what I have started doing more probably in the last 2 to 3 years is really focusing on moving better before we worry about swinging better.
I get I'm there. I believe in that. I know my facility, if you came in for a lesson, the first 15 minutes before your lesson actually started, hip work, shoulder work. There was even a focus. Can you stare at a dot? Like, how long can you stare at a dot on a piece of paper? Because if I need to focus on the strike zone or the batter, like if I can't keep my eyes in one spot for more than 10 seconds, we're really gonna our feedback system's gonna be off. Everything's gonna be delayed. And you mentioned it, like moving better and it produces speed. As I know, really the only time to get my athletes to realize, hey, this movement is better is when they get exposed by facing another pitcher, a faster pitcher. And so
Yep.
that speed is exposure. Cause yeah, you might be able to swing it by using your arms. But if your hips are actually creating your arm speed, now, like, those high speed pitchers look slow. It looks like beach balls, but, you know,
Well,
the exposure. Yeah.
I had a kid the other day, and I have to do it every once in a while. especially with the kids like 11 to 14, that you're really starting to see. Like, there's some 11-year-olds out there that are just pumping gas from, you know, 50 feet or whatever it may be. And then you've got, 14-year-olds nowadays. Some of them, these top level 14-year-olds, you got guys throwing the ball 90 miles an hour at 14 years old. And of course, those are the 0.01%, but they are out there. And so sometimes I have to tell my players, hey, I know that you're listening to me and I know that you're trying, but I'm going to have to expose you right now so that you truly understand and get 15 feet away and, make it 85 or 90-mile an hour reaction time. And then they're like, oh God, their swing just it falls apart. Um, and so doing that, and I talk a lot about that when parents ask about how do I translate or how does my kid translate from practice and cage into games without fault. You're not testing the swing enough. You're not seeing competitive at bats. You're not seeing high enough velocity. You're not seeing sharp enough breaking balls. Like, you have to go get uncomfortable. And again, that's cliche. You hear every coach say it, but it's true. If your practice doesn't make you uncomfortable, you aren't preparing properly. And that's just the nature of the beast. It is what it is.
So, do you train differently different times a year, or is your goals pretty much like get the swing as best as you can while they're in the cage with you?
It
Um,
depends on the athlete. So, because each athlete kind of approaches their life differently, for the most part during the spring here, um, kids are playing their high school season or their kids are playing their spring travel ball. So during the spring, we're usually maintenance, approach, mentality, like, and just trying to stay the course. If I'm hot, how do I stay hot? If I'm struggling a little bit, what can I do to kind of break out of this? Um, During the summer, the older kids, we try to get them to understand, hey, I know you got to go play, but this is your time to train. And if we need to revamp something, let's start doing that, unless you are a kid that is looking for a college scholarship right now and this is your last summer and we can't go through a swing change. Like, we can't do that while you're trying to succeed. So that's very individual, but basically summer and fall would be more on the training side. If we do need to make any major changes to the swing, kids that do need to worry about their body more than their mechanics. That's the focus. And then right before, so from like December working into February would be season ramp up. Get our arms in shape, get our legs in shape, make sure that we are ready to go when the season starts and we're still not trying to play catch up.
I had a very similar system, so I was curious. Yeah, we did a surgery in the fall, and then really leading up to season, everything would speed up. Like, I would make everything faster than game pace, because depending on the athlete, they may be fighting for a job in February, and with money involved, right? So you have to win a job in February. You can't, I'm here, let's get things rolling. Like, no, like, jobs have to, and then the college level, like, there's only 9 guys that can start, 9 girls that can start. So are we prepared to win jobs? And then are we prepared to win championships? So how do I build? Let's get you to win the job. Now let's get you to not peak in the beginning of the season,
Yeah,
because nobody's passing out trophies in February. Like, how do we
no doubt.
build so everything comes together right when it needs to? Is it conference plays when everything needs to come together? Is it playoffs when everything needs to come together? Is it March Madness, whatever sport? Like, when does everything need to come together? And then, that plan is really established in August. Like, when's this game one, when's the championships. You know, high schools are pretty easy everybody has to start the same day and all this playoffs start the same day. College is pretty similar, but yeah, you gotta that difference of like, what are the goals, and then getting them to perform at the right times to get the right wins at the right time, like, so I can go on forever
And I
about all
think
of
that
that, yeah,
everybody that's where the puzzle pieces become more difficult to find the place, right? Because everybody's body is going to react different. And when do I need to go hard? How much recovery do I need? When do I need to have this maintenance? Nutrition.
right,
That's one thing that not nearly enough young people sleep and nutrition. For anybody that listens to this, sleep and nutrition, you need to figure out like yesterday. Um, so but everybody's body reacts differently. Some guys have an arm, and not that it's bad. Some guys have an arm, they can go out and throw 100 pitches. 3 days later, they've done their arm care. You probably don't want them to go throw 100 pitches, but they're not even sore. They're good to go. Some guys throw 100 pitches and they need that full 5 days. Um, so everybody's different. Catchers' bodies. You were talking about catching earlier.
yeah,
You know, those poor girls that go out and catch 5, 6 games in a 2 day span. Like, I hope that you're doing your self care, because
yeah,
those knees and backs and everything else, mentally, the focus that it takes to catch 6 games in 2 days, like, that's mind boggling. So it takes a lot. And that's where the team, the coaches, the parents, the trainers, whatever, that's where all that communication has to take place. Um, and that's something else. I mean, that me and you could probably talk about that for a whole hour.
right.
Is players having multiple coaches, multiple trainers on multiple teams, and getting the message to all be one instead of a bunch of different ones pulling them in different directions.
Yes. I know that was a huge hurdle because I would do the assessments, we'd run analytics, I'd do the nutrition coaching, I'd do the recovery coach, like, I would have, people who paid for that level of service would get that type of programming, and I would send it to the high school coaches or college coaches and be like, "This is where they're at. This is what they need to do, and if you need them to win, then we need to work together because numbers don't lie here." Right? And,
Yeah.
they paid for that extra set of eyeballs to really look at, "Oh, their hip external rotation is garbage, so that's why they can't stay connected and they're always out front." Like, I can tell you why, and I can have a plan in place, and most things can be fixed in about 3 to 6 weeks. So it's not like it's a long-term thing. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, I had several coaches be like, "Well, they doing your program or my program?" I'm like, "Well, we both want them to win, so how do we make it work together?" And can other
Yeah.
and then you've had the college or the coaches that are like, "I'm gonna put all of my athletes on the protocol that this one athlete's on because it makes sense." You know, and the big thing that I fought as a softball pitching coach is you talked about catchers, but there's no pitching limits for softball pitchers, and there's a lot of violence that goes into a pitch. And when you don't have a limit on that, the everything has to be on point. I'm like, we're training for 12 pitches or less per inning because your body's not going to be able to last very long. So even like in game stuff, it's like you got to be able to get this girl out in 12 pitches, or that's our training.
Yeah.
Mm, You got to get 3 outs in 12 pitches, right? Not one girl. So
It's
and I had a
it's
yeah,
funny. It's funny that you bring up how violent softball pitching is. Couple years ago, Mike Candrea. So he was a coach at
yeah,
Arizona, Hall of Fame guy. Well, his son does hitting lessons in Chandler, Arizona, with another one of the social media coaches that I'd go back and forth with. And so I went out there and, talked to him. I'm sitting there watching, and he's doing full arm circle. And I'm like, dude, I was like, how long have you been doing full arm circles with your softball girls? He goes, oh man, I learned a couple years ago. I was like, that's a good thing. I'm gonna have to learn to do that. And so when I got back home, I started training, full arm circles. I kid you not, within about 8 months, I had torn my right meniscus from planning and going. And because I hadn't stabilized my lower half to make that move, and that planting and pushing and everything else, I had to take like 6 months off of full motion, full arm circle because of what it was doing to my lower half until I could get my knees right again. It's like it is. It's extremely violent. Everybody's like, "Oh, the arm's supposed to move that way. It's easier." That's fine, but look on what's going underneath the hood.
Right.
Like there is, oh, dude, the hips and the knees, and it's wild.
Right. And yeah, everything starts at it stops at contact, like, with foot strike, and I think you can believe with
Boom.
hitting too, and pitching, throwing, like, as soon as that foot strikes, whatever that foot is, determines what's happening, and if it's in the wrong spot, joints are
Yeah.
suffering,
I think
quickly.
I think I said right. I meant left. I say I can't even
I
keep my
think
right
yeah,
from my left. My left knee. But
yeah, that plant
yeah,
foot.
it was eye opener. I was like, dang man, and these girls are doing this 600 times a weekend. Like, God bless.
Yeah. No,
It's crazy.
I've had some girls over 60-mile-per-hour pitchers that are the only pitcher for their high school team, and, like, I think 2,000 pitches in a season in game,
That's nuts.
and she had some neck soreness over the summer. That was it because I trained her since she was 8, so at that point,
Yeah.
it's we've built the body to do it. Um,
Yeah.
and
Well,
I'll tell you
you've
this,
been
a
doing
lot
it
of
a lot.
girls that are trying to pitch with violence that don't weigh enough or don't eat enough, like, the power's gotta be absorbed somewhere. You can't be a little girl and do this sport, at least pitch. You're gonna have to
That
eat and
well, and
train
I
and have
hope
the weight behind it. Yeah.
I hope that with how popular it is getting, like me and Brian were talking about, like the professional softball stuff now, they were just here in Austin and had the biggest crowd ever, like 40,000 people. It was something crazy that here in Austin. And then with the Women's College World Series being put on national TV and all of that, I hope that the young girls are really taking inventory of how good at athletes those women are. Like the men have been able to see those college guys and everything for a long time. And we were able to be like, look, fella, you want to be a D1 baseball player? This is what it looks like. Like these are the bodies, you know? And now with everything with the social media and with the softball just blowing up,
Mhm.
I hope that these young girls, they have great trainers like you. They have great trainers, there's tons of great softball trainers out there, but now it's right there in front of you. Like, here's the model. This is what a D1 pitcher looks like. This is what a D1 catcher looks like. Um, and can take that all in and really understand it's a lifestyle. If you want to be that level athlete, you have to start sacrificing other things.
Love that. It is in fact a lifestyle, and yeah, and if you're an athlete of any kind and you don't watch the professional or the college level in your sport at the highest level, you really don't have any goal. You don't have a way to realistically have goals set. I know the
It,
first time I saw Division I volleyball, 'cause, our high school, middle school had good volleyball program, so we went and saw Division I volleyball, and I just watched the warm-ups, and I looked at my mom, I said, "We don't play volleyball at all, do we?" And she laughed because, like, these girls are, like, running plays and stuff on the net. I'm, like, 6th grade, 7th grade, I'm like, "Holy cow," like, we don't even come close to this stuff. And so that just that eye-opening experience, like, it's there in front of you, like, success leaves breadcrumbs, like, there is a
mm-hmm.
trail of success, and that girl's gonna move on, you can take her spot, but somebody with that body is gonna take her spot, and it can be you, or it can be the girl who did the sacrificing to have that strength and stamina and all the tools that go along with that. And I've had athletes that had Division I SEC numbers, but they say you don't have the body, you don't have the size, and I don't think that's a knock of anything other than you're going to be hurt, and I'm not going to give you money to sit on the bench. Like I'm not going to give you scholarship if I can see like the future is like you're going to be injured if you try to perform at the capacity I need you to perform. And a lot of Division
There
One
was
coaches, when I was doing all the assessments, they're like, the last thing we want to do is teach you how to be strong. Like, well, that's the last thing we want to do.
right.
Yeah, we got the trainers, but if you're not strong enough, like you have to be stronger than the injury potential. Like you need to be able
Yep.
to run and cut and not blow out your knee. You have to be stronger than the injury potential, or you're wasted money sitting on the bench. Like you're a bad investment. Like seriously.
I don't remember what it was, but it was a scouting show of some sort a couple years ago. And the guy was like the scout was walking by and this guy was like, "Oh, you really got to come look at this kid, blah blah blah." He goes, "He has bad ankles." And the dude was like, "Huh?" He goes, "Look at his ankles." He's like, "He's never going to make it." And that was like, holy moly, like this dude is looking at all of these like great young athletes, and he's literally looking at the shape of your ankles to
That's
figure out if you're going to be able to do this or not.
that the the
It
the mentor that I was able to get in front of, who trained all the athletes, he worked with Olympians, and he was the specialist when it comes to, taking one percenters and making them 0.1 percenters, right? Like the top. And that was one of the big things he looked at, and when he taught me the assessments, that's one of the big things I look like. Part of the warm-up routine that I talk about with my athletes is ankle mobility. Well, I trained he was a minor league guy, ended up getting a World Series MLB championship ring, and after his assessment, I was like, "This ankle is gonna cause you problems." Like, this is the thing, like,
that's
this is what's happening because it doesn't not only does that foot not stabilize on time, his glutes s can't get it his glutes are delayed on the firing because he's waiting to stabilize, so we're not locking in the front leg to get all the leverage to throw 90 plus miles per hour. So, it's like that ankle makes all the difference, and we've had athletes that are mid-80 guys, we work on their ankle mobility and really
mhm.
forearm mobility. Like some people don't get full range of motion in their wrist. So ankle mobility and wrist mobility, and he jumped up to 90, over 90 very quickly. Just ankle mobility. We didn't change his mechanics or anything, but really, we'll take it all full circle. Your ankles have to transfer power first. If you truly understand how to use the ground, then you have to be able to transfer power, and your knee is not always directly over your foot, right? So we need sometimes we have to be able to maintain. Sorry, my little demographic. But you have to be able to maintain power when you're not in ideal power position. Like you're not always going to have that perfect shin angles and everything where you need to go, but you still have to be able to provide the power, and you can create that strength if you go to somebody who knows what they're talking about. So
I
sorry.
just love talking to you. I love talking to you about this stuff.
Yeah,
So,
we
all
get
right.
this out right.
So I posed this question because all the know-it-alls on social media, whatever.
Uh-huh.
Everybody, I'll post a video of a 9-year-old, and they'll be like, "Well, what is his sequence right? What starts the swing?" So I posed the question on a couple different of the groups that I'm in. What body part really starts the swing? And I'm talking about one of this was on youth baseball coaches group on Facebook. One was one of my coaching groups on Instagram. I put it on the softball training group on Facebook. And of course, there were 10,000 different answers, right?
Well, I can't wait. Yeah.
And so and so I'm sitting there and I'm going, all right, you got all these people telling all these kids all these different body parts start. I mean, I had back shoulder, I had back elbow, I had hips, I had back knee, I had, big toe, whatever. And I'm like, are people just not paying attention? Or are they just trying to make this more difficult than it is? Like, and to your point about the ankle, everything starts with your feet. Like, what your feet do as soon as they interact with the ground. Do we sit and drive? Do we sit and spin? Do we come and lift? Are we, all of these different things. And you just make it seem so simple. You're like, all right, if my knee's like this, or if my knee's a little bit inside, what is my ankle doing? Like, of course, it has to do with your feet and your ankles. Like, and that's where everything comes from. And so that's just, you make it sound easy, and I wish people would just actually listen, like, and just take it in. Forget what they were told when they were in high school. Oh, your hip starts your swing. Oh, your hand. No, 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 it doesn't. Like,
Right.
no.
Yeah. We had a dinner with, it was a hitting facility local, and we were, working with them, and they asked me in the middle of a restaurant, like, "Where do you get the power?" And I picked my foot up, and I said, "I, can't really see it here, but I'm, like, pushing in the air, like, nothing's happening. I can push in there all day long. I can't create anything." And then I had a post a long time ago where I was working with rotation, and, the athletes were doing this. I'm like, do you see anybody out there just like spinning their head and then their bodies are spinning around? Like, you can't do top down
Exorcist.
rotation. It has to be bottom up rotation. And like we touched on, the power has to come from the only thing constant. The ground is always going to be on every playing surface, like that, then gravity. So back to the how are we working with gravity or against gravity? And then are we allowing ourselves to float through the path of least resistance? Like, you can still make the motion happen, but is it with the right muscles? And I can even take the foot access to another level. People who are the hip swingers, the people who think, oh, the hips, the first one. Well, you have to use the ground to activate the muscle. And I won't nerd out there, but the muscle needed
Yeah, yeah.
it to hold all of your body weight and hip external rotation and hold it there while you do your stride, and then decide if it's a good swing or not, if it's a good pitch or not. So you need that time, and you need
It's
to have which muscles actually needs to say, all right, this is a good swing, right? And if you can't load it by using the ground, then there's no trigger, right?
Well, and that's a whole different animal there.
Right.
I talk about that a lot. People. One of the most common questions that I get is, "What's the biggest flaw with young hitters?" Loading.
Hmm.
It's the
I heard
first
this
thing that has to
post.
happen, and it has to be right.
Hmm.
Like, and I use this example. I said it at a camp. I was at a camp. I don't know, 6 months ago, and I said to the players, I said, think about it this way. I was like, think about your swing as a word, and each component of the swing is a letter. Okay. So if I'm going to spell this letter correctly, or spell this word correctly, the first letter has to be right. And I was like, that's your load. And, it like, for some of them, it was like, it's because they just wanted to go swing. Well, why am I inconsistent? Why am I off balance? Why am I just swinging with my hands? Why am I falling off? All of this stuff. And it's like, homie, and it was a baseball at this time. So I said, homie, I was like, you aren't loaded right. You can make contact at some point, but you're never going to be consistent. You're never going to hit for power, and you're never going to have adjustability. I was like, learn to load. And I actually have one of my YouTube videos is master these three hitting positions.
Hmm.
And it's load, launch, connection. If you load right, you get to an athletic launch position, you're in the ground, and you get connected properly. From there, you better just hope your eyes were right and you're on time, because the swing's done. Um, and that's one of those things, man. And if people would just listen to you for 5 minutes, like, for real, like, the people that know what they're talking about, if people would just listen to true motor specialist biomechanic people that don't use a bunch of, jargon that nobody understands, and they're trying to talk about, all this crazy stuff, and just be like, look, this is how our body loads. We're engaging the proper muscles, and this is how the kinetic chain works. Like, yes, it's complicated and you need degrees, but it's also not rocket science. And if you'll just pay a little bit of attention, common people can figure that out. And sometimes I think people are just stubborn.
There's so much noise around it, and like you said, people can be successful the wrong way and, you know still feel like it's success, but oh, yeah, I don't know how long we can go, but I know I could keep going. But, yeah, I did see your load post, and I was like, yeah,
Mm,
and here's some more information for our people, why not? It's when I measured athletes, I checked 64 ranges of motion, and if you were a right-handed hitter, you were terrible at right hip external rotation. You were a great internal hip rotation because the swinging and the throwing, internal, 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 but you don't have any strength in the external. And that, like I said, the kinetic chain, being able to hold your full body weight in external rotation on your back leg is loading. Like that's the strength and the mobility pieces that go into properly loading. And then your trigger. Now your muscles can start your sequencing. Start, okay, this is a good pitch. The hip's gonna go. And if hips are not controlling your arm speed, you can forget analytics. Your spin rates are gonna be garbage. Hitting and pitching, contact's gonna be garbage. You'll get lucky every once in a while if the pitcher misses their spot and you hit it really far and really hard. But just throw you some off speed stuff and down and away, and you're gonna, spin. Your head's gonna be spinning out because you don't know how to spin from the ground. Whew, all right.
yeah, yeah,
And we don't take that role lightly for anybody, and it's um from a lot of trial and error on our own just to let hey this it can be done, and it can be done all with the mindset and the right attitude, right? That's
absolutely.
beautiful. So thank you so much. We're thank you. Thank you. That's
You're very
a role we love. We love to have that role for people.
well. Yeah, y'all are doing it, and doing it right.
So everybody, Josh, thank you so much for being here. It's always a pleasure. And yeah, we need to do these conversations more often. And everybody else, if you found something you liked about this post, give it a like, give it a share, give it a follow. Make sure hitting done right is liked on your Instagram now. Go to the YouTube now, get it liked. And thanks for watching Podcast on Wheels.
See y'all.
Yeah.